In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends and products creating a buzz here in China. On today's show, we'll discuss whether China's removal of tariffs on the import of Swiss watches would finally contribute to the recovery of luxury markets, as well as a restraint on corruption from officials. For many Chinese consumers, the most well-known Swiss specialty products are their well-made watches. According to statistics in 2002, China had spent $19 million on importing Swiss watches, while in 2012, the expenses increased to $320 million. China then became the third largest market for Swiss watches internationally. There was still a large number of Chinese mainland consumers traveling to Hong Kong to purchase luxury goods, such as the Swiss watches at lower tax rates. The export of Swiss watches to Hong Kong had almost tripled during the time to $870 million, which made Hong Kong the largest market for Swiss watches in the world. A sudden change has hit mainland China. The large sales of Swiss watches in China has experienced a major shift by the end of 2012, when China announced a restriction on government officials' use of public funds for the first time. In the first 3 months of 2013, the volume of exports of Swiss watches to mainland China had suffered an annual decrease of 26% and a drop of 9% to Hong Kong. In March, Swiss watch exports had fallen 31% to mainland China and 8% to Hong Kong. Some experts consider the sales volume in March this year as the worst month for sales in China the past 3 years. In regards to the drop in sales at the same time of the restrictive policy, many people confirmed their previous beliefs that the government officials are the main consumer group buying Swiss watches in China. One anonymous source exposed that in some regions in China, many local government officials usually purchase luxury Swiss watches with public funds as gifts to higher-ranking officials to help them get access to better development opportunities. Also, many merchants, such as real estate businessmen, would buy some Swiss watches as gifts to some government officials so that they would have the chance to win the rights to land plots with relatively low prices. On May 27th this year, the China Commerce Department claimed that China had agreed to cut import tariffs on Swiss watches by 60% in 10 years as the two nations seek to expand trade, a move that may boost sales by retailers such as Hong Kong-based Heng Daily Holdings. According to Assistant Minister of Commerce Yu Jianhua, the reductions will take effect after the countries sign a free trade agreement, which may take place in July. The duties will be cut by 18% in the first year and around 5% in each of the following 9 years, according to a transcript posted on the ministry's website. Some people believe that a decline in tariffs of Swiss watches, mainly focused on taking further controls to the campaign against corruption, damps demand for luxury gifts as economic expansion cools. There are definite price gaps between the luxury watch sales in China and in other countries. A large number of Chinese purchasing power has flowed into overseas markets in recent years. China is expecting to try and bring back its purchasing power from overseas markets through tariffs reductions. Also, to allow more mid-income groups in China to be able to afford a piece of the luxury goods market. Some netizens showed their opinions on the internet. One poster wrote, quote, "The import tariff of Swiss watches is actually not very high. Instead, it's the consumption taxes making the watch prices so expensive in China compared to overseas. Thus, if the consumption tax can't be removed, then we common people would still find it impossible to afford a Swiss watch with our current salaries." While some posters ironically wrote, quote, "I bet that with the decreasing prices of Swiss watches, the numbers of consumers would go down too. The purchase of relatively cheap watch won't show off the social status of officials anymore." However, some other posters pointed out, quote, "According to some news sources, only the common classes of Swiss watches would have discounted imported tariffs, while none of the high-end watch import tariffs would be affected. The government clearly shows no will to help us common people to afford a high-end Swiss watch." The size of the brakes on tariffs is still unknown. For those interested in shifting Chinese purchase power from abroad and back to China, the costs of many goods will still be cheaper abroad. The Hamilton watch usually costs $1,200 in China, but $820 in America. The import tariff for this watch is 3% of its retail price, coming to $33 to $50. Therefore, the watch would still be $300 more expensive in China than it is overseas. In the end, the average income Chinese citizen will still have very little rationale for buying a high-end watch.